expectations, and they were not met.
See, and when it comes to DC, I've learned that high expectations are a very bad thing to have. We know with Marvel there's a certain expertise that they have perfected over the last few years. Specifically when you look at Thor, Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, there's so much that they put into it that they refuse to put out garbage. Now, with Wonder Woman,
it's not so much that is that they have their machine has become, and that's what it is. They have a well-oiled machine that you get to the point where they are doing things so well, and they've got formulas that are going so well, and they've got directors in place that are so good that they're rarely making any mistakes.
Oh, I completely agree.
And even the movies, and even the things that you think, okay, aren't quite as good as others, they're still doing superbly well. I mean, you could go up and argue that Ant-Man was not, particularly great. I loved Ant-Man. I thought Ant-Man was great. But it wasn't on the level of some of the other movies were.
No,
but it still was really good.
For that instance, look at the material they have to work with. Ant-Man has always been known as this weak, useless character. So
not always, but there's some. If you have to go to the history, we're not talking about Henry Pym's Ant-Man. We're talking about. Oh God, I'm having a brain fart right now. I can't remember what the name of.
We'll call him George for now.
Okay, we'll call him George. And Paul Rudd. Well, Paul Rudd's character. We're talking about a different version. Henry Pym's Ant-Man, there's a lot of scandal involving the character, particularly, stuff that happened with him and with Wasp in the comics. Near his kind of departure from the Avengers. And I won't get into that. If you guys want to find out, go Google it and you'll find out some very interesting information about Henry Pym. But I mean, even though there's some stuff there, like we have friends who claim to love comic book movies and love Marvel, but they don't like Ant-Man, and I can understand why. But Ant-Man is still was still a really good movie, and I don't know what watching Wonder Woman, watching Batman versus Superman, which are movies I probably will never buy on Blu-ray or DVD, but it's not going to stop me from going to see, these movies. No, but I want more.
The one thing I found with Wonder Woman was, to me, it felt like a roller coaster. Now, usually, that's
roller coasters are good.
Usually, it is, but
as long as I'm not actually physically riding on the roller coaster.
In this case, about halfway through, I actually wanted to get off. I really felt like the storyline was forced. Gal Gadot was a marvelous, actor.
She was great. She played her good in it. And
but I believe she overshadowed everybody else in this movie, and not in a productive and good way.
And that, I don't know. There's the kind of the little militia that she goes off and she forms with Chris Pine's character. And, I mean, it was good. I mean, the guy played, they had both of those guys that were with them, the Scotsman, was really good, and the other guy, they were both really, really good.
I just feel the humor that they tried to infuse into it was completely forced.
I think in a lot of ways there wasn't enough of it, and I get, they want what DC is going for. They are trying so hard not to be Marvel, that they are going off and, Marvel, they want to go a little bit darker than what Marvel is, but they need the humor. They need to have a little bit more of what, they tried to do with Suicide Squad.
Squad, even though it didn't look that way in the box office as well, Suicide Squad was a success.
It was absolutely, it was a success. Was it exactly what DC was hoping it was? Of course not. But, I mean, we're talking about DC, if you look at it, Batman versus Superman and Suicide Squad, we're talking about two movies that had a lot of editing issues. Yeah. And there was a lot of stuff that was left on the floor in Suicide Squad that probably would have made it a better movie.
So we've been asked one specific question that we will answer before we go for a quick music break. So we've been asked what we feel about the Netflix Marvel superhero franchise, and if we feel that it's on Netflix because it's too dark.
You know what? I like where they're going. Unfortunately, I haven't watched. I think I've watched the first episode of Iron Fist, and I have not went back to watch the rest of it. I think it's on. I think you're right. I absolutely think it is on there because on Netflix they can get away with doing a darker series. They wouldn't be able to get away with stuff like what we've seen in any of these shows, on regular network television. See, maybe on HBO, but I don't think on network TV.
And see, I kind of agree. I do think it is too dark for TV or
It would be. We're talking. It would be on ABC if it was.
I also feel that it doesn't have enough power to stand alone on a regular TV a station. Now, I do like Luke Cage. I like Jessica Jones. I really think that with Iron Fist they fell flat. Really, I wasn't very appreciative of the storyline there for multiple reasons. I don't, I really don't like how Iron Fist was portrayed. Really weak, whiny, pathetic. It really made me kind of reach through my monitor to slap him across the face and tell him to grow up.
See, I'm not as familiar with Iron Fist or with Jessica Jones as I was with even Luke Cage. I knew a little bit more about Luke Cage. And, of course, I knew who Daredevil was, going back to, like, the, Spider-Man cartoons where he would appear on a couple of episodes here and there.
So, what annoys me the most is with the announcement of the Defenders.
Yes.
Now, I've always been a fan of the Defenders. I like it because it's a bunch of no-name heroes banding together.
Well, it is a bunch of heroes that, really were a part, were taking care of certain sections of New York City, as opposed to the Avengers, who were more of an international group, or strictly for the defending the United States. The Defenders was a small group, and it had a lot of turnover, but it was definitely central to New York, and in particular to Hell's Kitchen.
No, I completely agree. But what's annoying me with this the most is you have, three very strong characters. Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones. They're very, they've learned about themselves, so to speak, and accepted their powers and kind of where they stand. But then you have Iron Fist, who to me still comes across as this whiny, very unappreciative, spoiled kid, and I don't know how it's going to tie in with the storyline they've done.
The very idea that he would be spoiled seems really weird, considering the background of the character. That seems weird. Again, I've only watched the first, maybe second episode of the show, so I'm having a hard time going off and saying this. I do know that in the comics that he goes off, and Luke Cage becomes a mentor to him. And from what I have read in Entertainment Weekly, we are going to see the formation of that relationship. And I think we'll see a personal growth for Iron Fist once that relationship is put in place.
I hope so, but if you go back to the comic books and that, when the Defenders were formed, all four were very strong, characters who knew where they stood and who they were.
And see, I don't know if I agree with you on there. Because depending on the timelines you're going on there, that's not necessarily true. And when you consider these four characters were not all the original members of the Defenders, so it's hard to go in there. And of course, what I would love to see is I'd love to see them actually branch off and do Heroes for Hire with Luke Cage and with Iron Fist like they did in the comics, because I think going off and working off that relationship would be a very interesting idea.
Before introducing the Defenders, that is the route they should have taken first to grow the relationship and all that, and grow Iron Fist before the Defenders come to
and
fruition.
I see where you're going with that. The only problem with that is the way they ended Luke Cage is with him going to prison, and of course you need Murdoch to go off and to defend him and get him out of jail.
Yeah, so
the way they're going off and trying to bring everyone together is, I think
it's this series is too rushed and whatnot, but that's my personal opinion.
Well, how can you say that considering they've only been putting out, 2 seasons
of everything but Iron Fist,
per year. I mean, we've had 2 seasons of Daredevil, but that second season was never even intended to even come out before Defenders. So they actually put off Defenders to go off and bring in a second season of Daredevil so they could add to the story and to go off and to do the other things that they wanted to do.
They waited too long to put Iron Fist. If they had done them all within the same timeline, so to speak, it would have been a lot easier. I'm just not a big fan of what they're going, but I do believe we should go for our quick music break and come back, and we will talk about our other topic of the night, and hopefully not argue as much.
Possibly. I don't know. I'm not going to go off and agree or disagree with that.
So we enjoy our music, and we will be right back. Hey guys, welcome back to the Captain Fizz and Mask Guy show. Once again,
of course, you're Captain Fizz. I'm that Mask Guy, and
we have been debating so many different things so far, and it's been a wonderful show.
It has been, and the reason why we actually started off with Wonder Woman is, it was meant to be a segue into this topic where we were going to kind of try to get into strong women characters that have been in movies. It was recently in articles it was brought up that Wonder Woman is the first truly strong female character in this genre that's kind of been the star of the show. But there's been so many really strong female characters in both television and movies, for the better part of 30 years. And
many of which we have both grown up watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's kind of debatable. I mean, granted, this is the first time that we've went off and we've seen a woman be allowed to be the central character in like a comic book movie that's actually been successful. In the mid 1980s, they tried to bring out Supergirl, and that movie absolutely bombed.
Yes. I do argue, though, that even though with Suicide Squad, that Harley Quinn was part of a group, I do argue the fact that she was kind of, in a sort of sense, the ringleader of that group, even though the director, and I really should have wrote her name down, was one technically supposed to be the one in charge of all of them, but there were so many strong female roles in that movie alone.
There was great, but the problem, I think, where we've come from and where this really got you angry about was that, there's been tons of really great characters. We could go back to Princess Leia, who really was the princess who really did not need to be saved. 30 seconds after Luke Skywalker saves her, she takes charge of Luke, Han, and Chewie and tells them, to jump down the trash, chute. So, she was a really powerful character back then, and we could go back, we could even talk about Ripley from, Aliens, who, in the movies, in those types of movies, the woman never survives. They always get destroyed by the monster.
And she was definitely the change in that. She was a very strong female role who not only survived, but lived to take charge and continued in, how many movies that she was
in, I believe, 3 more after that. I think they got to the point, though, where Aliens 3 was actually considered not to be part of the whole story, so that Aliens Resurrection, where she's, a clone of Ripley is brought back, it was actually, completely erased Aliens 3 because it was considered to be so terrible.
Amy actually just brought up a point that I had completely forgot. They did actually make, and I guess we could argue whether or not they're a superhero or not, they made an Elektra movie.
Yeah, but again, Elektra didn't really do well And I think, it may have come down to the point, and again, they brought out a Catwoman movie with